Good morning, First Unitarian. So I want to start by, doing something a little bit unusual. You see, the Immigration Justice Group emphatically asked me to preach on the subject of immigration justice today, but they did not tell me that it would be 55 minutes into the service before I got a chance to do that. So recognizing both the request and the fact of how long we've all been sitting, I'm just going to invite you to just stand and stretch for a minute if you want to. So last week, I took a few minutes to let you know that we, that's in this congregation, we have been asked by the American Friends Service Committee and the Colorado Coalition for Immigrant Rights to become a sanctuary congregation for a family that is facing deportation. Melanie spoke of this earlier. And it's kind of a big deal for a number of reasons. But before I go into that too much further, it would be good to know some background for this request. And here's a few things that you should know. Immigration justice is one of our congregational projects. You have voted this to be a congregational project for 2 years in a row now, and all indications are that in a couple of months you'll get to vote on re-upping it again for another year, or at least another year. Congregational projects, by the way, are one of the ways we organize our social justice work at First Unitarian Denver. We currently have 4 of them. Immigration justice is one, peace is another, homelessness is a third, and our last one is called Illuminating Invisible Injustice, or I-Cubed, as we like to say, which focuses on mental health, addiction, and trauma. Over the last couple of years, the Immigration Justice Project here at First Unitarian has held numerous forums. They have brought in guest speakers. They have facilitated classes along with some of our ministerial interns. They have visited legislators. They have provided letter writing opportunities for the church. They have worked with our religious education program for the kids. They have lobbied at the state capitol. They have created Sunday worship and First Wednesday Vesper services. They have hosted film and book discussion groups. They have attended monthly vigils at the Immigration Detention Center in Aurora. They have taken nonviolent training in nonviolent resistance for wage theft, direct action, and detention center visitations. They developed working networks, working relationships with the American Friends Service Committee, the Colorado Coalition for Immigrant Rights, El Centro Humanitario, and more. They have arranged for all of these organizations to be recipients of our Giving in Action program, where we give away our offering plate twice a month, like we did just a moment ago. Would those of you who've been part of this immigration justice project, would you stand up briefly so we can recognize and thank you for all of this work? It's a lot of work. You should also know that the larger Unitarian Universalist Association has been working on this issue in one way or another for over 50 years. Our denomination passed a resolution for migrant worker rights in 1961, for immigration reform in 1963. We were active in the original sanctuary movement, passing resolutions, actions of immediate witness in 1980, and from 1984 to 1986. In 2007, as Melanie noted, the Unitarian Universalist Association became the first denomination to join the new sanctuary movement, and at our General Assembly in 2012, was entirely dedicated to social justice, with thousands of Unitarian Universalists marching in Phoenix, Arizona to protest the racist and abusive policies of that state. Kirsten Humblett, now the Reverend Kirsten Humblett, was one of our interns that year, and she led a group on an educational journey to the Mexican border to witness firsthand the conditions there and the ridiculous system that migrants and immigrants and detainees must endure. Now, if you haven't been following this issue or haven't been part of this work, you might be asking yourself why this is so important and what this has to do with you. I'm going to take the risk of oversimplifying a pretty complex reality. But there are 3 large practical flaws in our current immigration system. Flaws that produce untold human suffering. That is completely unnecessary. It's just unnecessary. The first great flaw, perhaps the essential flaw from which all the others derive, is the way in which current law fails to allow or account for temporary workers. There are hundreds of thousands of seasonal temporary workers who come to the United States for jobs that hardly anybody who's here wants, but which for these migrant workers is real prosperity. These workers are an essential part of the economy, and all of us rely upon them. By severely limiting the number and type of workers allowed to enter the country legally, workers that companies and the economy needs, the current system makes it inevitable that workers without documentation will immigrate to seek those jobs, and employers will circumvent the law to hire them. That's inevitable, given the conditions that exist. These conditions, this situation creates conditions that are ripe for abuse. With undocumented workers often facing unrealistic hours or productivity requirements, dangerous working conditions, unfair wages, underpayment for work, abusive bosses, or other conditions that employers get away with for the simple reason that they can. Undocumented workers have no recourse, and everyone knows it. They cannot organize, they cannot seek the protection of labor laws, they cannot seek the protection of occupational safety laws or anti-discrimination laws. Wage theft, which our dramatization earlier gave some life to, is a very real problem. The second major flaw is that we don't adequately recognize families on either end of the system. The process by which families might come here to work is arcane and backlogged to the point of absurdity. I'm talking decades. Decades. This is not an exaggeration. It forces spouses and parents to separate from their families for unspecified periods. It actually prohibits visiting, since the migrant worker who is here cannot leave the country without losing their visa, and families cannot enter. It is unfair and unnecessary that we make separation from family a condition of coming to work here in the United States. On the other end, if someone has been living here and working and paying taxes and raising their family, even if they've been here for decades, even if they're married to a U.S. citizen, even if they have children who are U.S. citizens, even though our own contradictory system makes it impossible for them to apply, they can be forcibly separated from their lives and their families and forcibly deported. This is a catch-22. For thousands of hardworking families, it makes no sense from any reasonable perspective. Which brings me to the third broken element of existing policy, which is the arbitrary, random, inhumane, and unjust ways in which enforcement takes place. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, unaffectionately known as ICE, uses jails and detention centers whether or not someone has committed a crime. They can be denied bond, they can be deported without a hearing. The system is rampant with stories of how these non-criminals, tens of thousands of people, have been subjected to strip searching, shackling, solitary confinement, lack of access to telephones, mail and legal resources, verbal, physical, even sexual abuse. Again, no consideration for the families they might be supporting, no real recourse. Between 2005 and 2008, 66 people died while being held in ICE detention from inadequate medical care. This kind of enforcement that is going on completely fails to address the basic issues, the need for workers, the rights of workers, the health of our communities, or even national security. They only make the inadequacies of the current system more tragic and highlight the urgency of a more rational, more just approach to immigration. And the thing is, it's just not that hard to fix. It's really quite simple to fix. Congress knows exactly what to do. They know exactly how to do it. But they've managed to avoid or ignore the issue for 26 years now. 1986 was the last time we had significant immigration reform in the United States. And yes, there are details to be worked out, but no sensible or informed person can deny the mess and the injustice that we currently have. So I offer the following as some very general, essential moral components of immigration reform. We need a reasonable, timely path to citizenship for millions of workers who are already here. Plain and simple. It's the only humane, it's the only sensible thing to do. We should set humanitarian goals by giving priorities to keeping families together and to refugees fleeing persecution. That doesn't mean we open the door to 500 million people from every country on earth that's having difficulty. It just says how we would most morally choose our immigration priorities. We desperately need to streamline and restructure programs for temporary workers, including the rights of those workers to a living wage and to organize if they so choose. Again, the only human and sensible thing to do. We should protect the most vulnerable sectors of American workers from an influx of low-wage competition. This is more difficult, but knowledgeable people assure me it is possible. We should protect the basic human rights of everyone who lives on our soil. We should protect the human rights of everyone who lives on our soil. Yay. Just that simple. Whether they are here with documentation or not, I don't even know why this is a point of discussion. Lastly, we should match immigration flow as closely as possible to what the country and the economy can reasonably tolerate on a sustainable basis so that we don't end up once again with a broken system that hurts everyone. Now I can finally get back to the very specific issue of First Unitarian becoming a sanctuary for a family facing deportation. Here are the essential things we need to understand. Because of timing issues with the family that we might be hosting, the Faith in Action Council and the Board of Trustees have already voted to go ahead with this, possibly as early as April, though they have also set it up so that you as a congregation will be able to veto the idea at the congregational meeting in May. We would be providing housing. That means we would have to find some place in this building where the family could actually live. The staff, the Immigration Justice Group, Property Management Committee have all been in conversation and discussing options. We have to consider privacy, access to bathrooms, access to a kitchen, and so on. There would almost certainly be costs involved. Since none of our rooms here at church are really designed to be living quarters, we'd have to make some transitions. We would be committing to this for some limited period of time, say 6 months or so, after which we would reassess how things were working out. We would be doing this very publicly. We would hold a press conference with the family. We would put out press releases. We would be joined by our partners, the American Friends Service Committee, the Colorado Coalition for Immigrant Rights, a host of other local congregations, both Unitarian Universalist and otherwise, who are also concerned with and committed to immigration justice. We would be engaging in civil disobedience. Make no mistake, we would be breaking the law by harboring a non-citizen for whom a deportation order has been issued. Let me speak to that just a little bit. It's essential we proceed with clarity about what this is. We are a church. We are a community of faith. We are an institution built around and dedicated to religious principles. We must not confuse what is moral with what is merely legal. Does that make sense? They are not the same things. It is worth noting, I suppose, that the forced removal of Native Americans from their land and onto reservations was entirely legal. The capture, importation, and slavery of African people was once legal. Laws that prevented African American citizens from voting or attending white schools or eating at white restaurants and so on were all perfectly legal in this country. Apartheid was legal. Nazi concentration camps were perfectly legal. Crucifying Jesus was legal. And so on and so on. These are extreme cases, but you get the point. I tell people every year when we stand on the side of love for marriage equality at the state capitol, you can make it legal to discriminate in who's allowed to get married, but you can't make it right. So yes, we would be doing this to help a particular, very specific family. We would be somewhat trusting that ICE would not come onto our property to forcibly arrest the person we would be sheltering. And we would be somewhat trusting that the Attorney General would not press charges against us for doing so. We would know this is part of the risk we're taking. The most important thing to remember, though, is that we would be doing this primarily as a church, as a moral people, to make a moral point that a system that would tear a woman away from her own child, away from her work, away from the life she has built over many years in this country is a moral travesty. A larger goal would be to raise awareness, put pressure on the public and on Congress to also see this in a moral light, get their butts down to work, and fix it.
Please stand and join us singing and keep on moving forward, the insert in your order of service. Gonna keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Gonna keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on dreaming bravely. Gonna keep on dreaming bravely. Gonna keep on dreaming bravely. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna show our children courage. Show our children courage. Gonna show our children courage. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna build our lives with passion. Gonna build our lives with passion. Gonna build our lives with passion. Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back.
Voy a leer la afirmación de cierre. Nuestra congregación se dedica a la proposición de que detrás de todas nuestras diferencias y debajo de toda nuestra diversidad hay una unidad entre todos nosotros que nos enlaza juntos para siempre, a pesar del tiempo, la muerte y el espacio entre las estrellas.
In English, our congregation
is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time and death and space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity.
Solo le pido a Dios que el dolor no me sea indiferente, que la reseca muerte no me encuentre, vacío y solo y sin haber hecho lo suficiente. Solo le pido a Dios que lo injusto no me sea indiferente.
I ask God that pain doesn't make me indifferent, that death doesn't come for me to find me empty and without having done the sufficient. I only ask God that injustice doesn't make me indifferent.